And so they need, generally, they're going to need a driver's license, a social security card.
Tyson Foods says it will close 2 poultry facilities, one in Virginia, another in Arkansas. The closures will impact 1,600 employees.
The national leaders are saying we're not going to stop the flow. That's a failed plan.
The magnitude of this migration crisis shouldered almost entirely by the New York City taxpayers.
Driver's license, passport, social security card. Those documents just some of the proof you're in our country legally.
The people that are here who are undocumented aliens, they want to work.
Green cards for migrants. Criminals with ties to MS-13 and other gangs are selling fake green cards and social security cards to migrants on street corners in Queens, a dangerous security threat as rogue newcomers pour into the Big Apple. This week, the Post spotted at least 10 men camped down in broad daylight at 4 different corners along Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, hawking the bogus documents for $80 to $250. The forged social security numbers can be used to open up a bank account and potentially obtain a real driver's license. Permanent resident cards, also known as green cards, give immigrants the lawful right to live and work in the U.S. Many migrants buy the forgeries to land jobs where employers do not look too carefully at documentation, but others can have much darker intentions. Armed with such ID, a person could load up a truck with bombs and bring it underneath the Holland Tunnel and create something major and disastrous, warned Bruce Foucart, a former special agent in charge of Homeland Security investigations in New England. The Roosevelt Avenue sellers are affiliated with the 18th Street Gang and with the ruthless MS-13, a high-ranking police source said. Both gangs originated in Los Angeles and are rivals known for crime and drug dealing, but also selling fake IDs. It's big business, the source said. The transnational criminal organizations running the mills also may have helped smuggle in migrants, creating a one-stop shop for undocumented newcomers, Foucart noted. Roosevelt Avenue has long been known to investigators as the East Coast epicenter for fake IDs. The area has also been a hotbed of prostitution, with the Post recently exposing the open-air market of sweethearts, as it is known in popular YouTube videos.
Been reporting on sex workers and trafficking on Roosevelt Avenue for nearly 20 years.
Should not be allowed to walk the streets of the city of New York if you are committing any form of criminal behavior.
The numbers we're seeing now seem unprecedented.
Area residents and workers are outraged by the fake ID mills in their midst. If they're doing social security numbers and nobody says shit, next time it'll be weapons and passports, said Z. Omar, 24, a clerk at Candy Grocery Food Corps on Roosevelt Avenue. Everyone can do what they want now. The influx of nearly 180,000 migrants to the city since the spring of 2022 has created a higher demand for the cards. People from other boroughs are coming specifically to this area to get the IDs. All the new migrants are coming here, one local said. Roy Fenoff, an associate professor at the Department of Criminal Justice at the Citadel, South Carolina, said the fake documents give migrants access to a slew of services otherwise impossible without government identification. Once people have these fake cards, they can work, they can travel, they can access a lot of aspects and services in the U.S., he said. There are people getting these cards that are not here just to get a job, that they have other intentions, and this helps them carry out criminal activity. The Social Security cards are fake, but the numbers are real, so U.S. citizens can be affected, he said. If I'm using a Social Security number that's of another person, and then I'm committing crimes, and I'm using their name, you potentially have warrants out there for innocent people's arrest, because you don't really know who this person was, he said.
For making fake driver's licenses and Social Security cards for illegal immigrants.
The U.S. government issued documents, it's very difficult to reproduce that fraudulent.
And so they need, generally, they're going to need a driver's license, a social security card.
Driver's license, passport, social security card. Those documents just some of the proof you're in our country legally.
Citing a case he handled of a Denver woman whose ID was stolen. Rogue migrants can also use the fake documents to avoid developing a criminal record under their real name, according to law enforcement experts. If they've never been fingerprinted before, under their fake name they can get arrested 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and they themselves would never have a record, said John Cutter, retired NYPD Deputy Chief of the Intelligence Division. With fake IDs, they become a ghost, so they become more emboldened and more willing to break the law and potentially do something that's really serious, he continued. Illegal immigrant Diego Ibarra, the brother of Jose Ibarra, who is accused of killing nursing student Laken Riley at the University of Georgia, is in federal custody in a case involving alleged possession of a fake green card, which he used to get work at the school. Diego has been linked to a brutal Venezuelan gang. In New York, the charge for making fake IDs is criminal possession of a forged instrument, a felony punishable by up to 7 years in prison. The NYPD said it is looking into all potential law-breaking on the Strip. The NYPD will continue to address conditions on Roosevelt Avenue, an NYPD spokesperson said. It's impossible to say how many of these fake cards are in circulation or the value for the black market of forged documents, although Cutter estimated there are likely tens of thousands of fake green and Social Security cards in use in New York City.
The people that are here who are undocumented aliens, they want to work.
We got exclusive access to the Mobile County Sheriff's Office, disturbing evidence that illegals are living among us.
Well, David, nearly 50,000 asylum seekers have gone through the system since last spring.
There are states that are very lenient on how they can get driver's license.
But the production and sale of the forged documents is increasing in New York City amid the spike in migrants, Fenoff noted. As opportunities for fraud increase and the demand increases, then the market always follows, he said. Stuck in lawless limbo. The gangs in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico are targeting migrants who have made it to the U.S. to ask for asylum, only to be taken into custody and stripped of their laces. They are then sent back to the lawless border state of Tamaulipas, where they remain for weeks and sometimes months as they await their U.S. court dates. Migrants in limbo are prey and a boon to smugglers as they recount harrowing stories of robbery, extortion by criminals and crooked officials, and kidnappings by competing cartels. The U.S. has set limits on applicants for asylum, slowing the number to a mere trickle, while the policy known as Remain in Mexico has meant the return of more than 55,000 asylum seekers to the country, while their requests meander through backlogged courts. The Mexican government is ill-prepared to handle the influx along the border, especially in Tamaulipas, where it has been arranging bus rides south to the relative safety of the northern city of Monterrey or all the way to the Guatemala border, citing security concerns. The gangs have adapted quickly to the new reality of masses of vulnerable people parking in the heart of their fiefdom, experts say, treating the travelers, often families with young children, like ATMs, ramping up kidnapping, extortion, and illegal crossings to extract money and fuel their empires. There's probably nothing worse you could do in terms of overall security along the border, said Jeremy Slack, a geographer at the University of Texas at El Paso who studies the border region, crime, and migration in Mexico. I mean, it really is like the nightmare scenario. Johan, a 31-year-old Nicaraguan security guard, trudged back across the border bridge from Laredo, Texas in July with his wife and 2 children in tow, clutching a plastic case full of documents, including one with a court date to return and make their asylum claim to a U.S. immigration judge 2 months later. Penniless, with little more than a cell phone, the family was entering Nuevo Laredo, dominated by the Northeast Cartel, a splinter of the brutal and once powerful Zetas gang. All along the border, there have been abuses and crimes against migrants by Mexican organized crime, which has long profited off them. But Tamaulipas is especially troubling. It is both the location of most illegal crossings and the state where the U.S. has returned the most asylum seekers, 20,700 through Nuevo Laredo and Matamoros as of early October. The Mexico City-based Institute for Women in Migration, which tracks kidnappings of migrants and asylum seekers, has documented 212 abductions in the state from mid-July through October 15th. Of the documented kidnappings in Tamaulipas, 197 occurred in Nuevo Laredo, a city of about 500,000, whose international bridges fuel the trade economy. Gangs in Tamaulipas have fragmented in the last decade, and now cartel cells there operate on a franchise model, with contacts across Mexico and Central America. They provide a service, control the territory, operate safe houses, and charge for all that. The Mexican government has been focusing on capturing migrants and asylum seekers in the border cities of Nuevo Laredo, Reynosa, Matamoros, and Monterrey to increase their labor force. The gang has been hiring recently, as the U.S. is deporting many migrants through the country. The captors initially demanded $16,000, but they managed to scrape together just $3,000, anchoring the gangsters. Johan's son fell ill with the mumps, and the family was released after 14 days captive. The gang told them that the cartel doesn't allow them to hold sick children, which could bring attention from the media and authorities. In another instance, cartel members were in the Nuevo Laredo office of Mexican Migration, openly abducting asylum seekers who had just been sent back from the U.S. One woman hid in the bathroom with her daughter and called a local pastor for help. He tried to drive them away, but they were blocked by cartel members. The two were taken from the car and held by the gangsters, though they eventually were released unharmed. A spokesperson for the Mexican Foreign Affairs Secretary declined comment on allegations that Mexico cannot guarantee safety for immigrants returned from the U.S. U.S. Border Patrol officials said recently they are continuing to send asylum seekers back over the border, and that includes Nuevo Laredo. The number of people returned there has been reduced recently, but that was related to a decrease in migrants arriving at the border, and not violence in Tamaulipas. Kidnappings of migrants are not a new phenomenon. According to Mexico's National Human Rights Commission, in just 6 months in 2009, nearly 10,000 migrants were abducted while passing through the country. Back then, the cartels were splintering amid a government policy targeting their top bosses, leading them to fight among themselves in the people smuggling business to fill two needs: money and labor. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has acknowledged that another massacre or escalation of crime is a major fear and has deployed more than 25,000 troops and National Guard agents to police people trafficking in border regions and along smuggling routes. A 46-year-old Cuban teacher and her 16-year-old son were abducted in Reynosa, Mexico, by two men who took their cell phone and money. They were moved to a thicket near the Rio Grande, where they were held captive for a week. The National Immigration Institute, one of Mexico's most corrupt agencies, fired over 500 workers nationwide in early 2019. Tamaulipas was one of 4 states where the most firings took place. The Institute's deputy delegate to the city was fired in February and accused of charging detained migrants over $3,000 to avoid deportation. The captors at the thicket referred to themselves as the Corporation, and people came and went, some delivered by men in uniforms who may or may not have been police. Edith Garrido, a nun who works at the Casa del Migrante shelter in Reynosa, said both crooked officers and criminals dressed as police are mixed up in the racket, making the rounds of safe houses to buy and sell kidnapped victims. The captors allowed the Cubans to use their cell phones for a few hours to coordinate ransom payments with relatives, always small amounts to different bank accounts. The teacher and her son now await their immigration court date in Reynosa, where they have found temporary construction work to pay for rent and food. Boycott calls persist. Conservative influencers and politicians are calling for a boycott of Tyson Foods after false claims spread online saying the multinational meat producer is planning to hire 52,000 people who came to the U.S. illegally. Tyson is closing its facility in Perry, Iowa, and laying off its 1,200 workers, reads one X post that has received approximately 20,000 likes and 11,700 shares as of Friday. Instead, they plan to hire thousands of new illegals in states like New York. Boycott Tyson, pass it on. But the company, the latest in a growing list of businesses targeted with calls for a boycott amid claims of woke policies, has no such plans. Here's a closer look at the facts. Claim: Tyson Foods is hiring 52,000 people who entered the U.S. illegally. The facts: the company has no current plans to hire 52,000 workers in the U.S., a spokesperson for the company said. In addition, all of its workers are required to have legal authorization for employment in the country. That is categorically false, Tyson said of the claims spreading online. Tyson told the Associated Press that it has between 5 to 8% of roles open in its 500 U.S. locations at any given time, all of which are available to anyone who is qualified and legally authorized to work in the United States. Tyson Foods is strongly opposed to illegal immigration, it wrote in a statement. The company's U.S. workforce comprises approximately 120,000 employees, according to Tyson. This means that it currently has roughly between 6,000 to 9,600 open positions. In 2022, Tyson committed to hiring 2,500 refugees in the U.S. over 3 years as a member of the Tent Partnership for Refugees, a network of more than 400 major multinational companies. Refugees, people who face persecution and were granted entry to the U.S. while living outside the country, are legally authorized to work as soon as they arrive in the U.S. People granted asylum in the U.S. also face persecution but applied for protection after they entered the country. Those whose applications are pending typically qualify for work authorization under an Employment Authorization Document, or EAD, 180 days after they file their asylum application. Anyone already granted asylum can legally work without an EAD. Both refugees and individuals granted asylum have legal status in the U.S. Tyson said that approximately 42,000 of its current U.S. employees are non-citizens with work authorization. Hywen Langworth, a spokesperson for the Tent Partnership for Refugees, told the AP that Tyson's 2022 commitment includes people with legal refugee status, as well as others such as asylum seekers or grantees with permission to work. The false claims appear to stem from a Bloomberg article published March 11 about Tyson's Tent Partnership for Refugees commitment. Garrett Dolan, Associate Director of Human Resources at Tyson, said in the article that the company plans to hire 52,000 people for factory jobs in 2024. According to Tyson, Dolan misspoke. Bloomberg told the AP that it stands by its reporting. Scripps News published its own article 2 days later, which reported that Tyson wants to hire 52,000 asylum seekers for factory jobs.
Migrants are getting the jobs that Americans don't want. A human resources executive for the company.
Tyson Foods says it will close 2 poultry facilities, one in Virginia, another in Arkansas. The closures will impact 1,600 employees.
Less than a week ago, Tyson announced that it will close its processing plant in Perry.
Yeah, cheaper labor for this business to produce a product. And it's not an easy job. You know, people that do those jobs, they're dirty, they're tough, but...
The outlet has since retracted the story for serious factual inaccuracies, writing that it was unable to verify that number. But false claims around the figure spread widely on social media. The report sparked calls to boycott Tyson, hardly the first company to face opposition to what are often described as woke policies. Bud Light sales plunged last year amid conservative backlash over the beer giant's partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney. Target made changes to its LGBTQ+ merchandise ahead of last year's Pride Month after customers confronted workers and tipped over displays. Rebecca Wolf, Senior Policy Counsel at the American Immigration Council, told the AP that U.S. companies relying on immigrant labor is nothing new, especially when it comes to industries such as meat processing, with roles considered undesirable by many U.S. citizens. Wolf said that hiring people willing to take jobs that are not particularly attractive to others is crucial to the economy. She added that the U.S. has really robust policies for ensuring that big companies like Tyson are employing people who are authorized to work in the U.S. She also pointed out that many employers have recently struggled to fill jobs given labor shortages. Tyson announced March 11 that it is closing a pork processing facility in Perry, Iowa, the town's largest employer. The company did not provide specifics, saying the closure was related to specific business reasons and that the decision is not related to our hiring efforts at other facilities. The announcement came after the company closed a plant in both Virginia and Arkansas in 2023 and consolidated its corporate operations the year prior. Although Tyson declined to comment when asked how many of the Perry plant workers are non-citizens, it said in a statement that any insinuation that we would cut American jobs to hire immigrant workers is completely false. The company also noted that it has encouraged the Perry employees to apply for other positions at Tyson. Some social media alleged that following the Perry closure, Tyson will be hiring in New York, where there has been a massive influx of migrants. However, Tyson said that it does not operate in New York, nor does it have any plans to do so.
So these are asylum seekers or people applying for a very similar temporary protected status.
Tonight, a global food company is stepping in to help workers set to lose their jobs this summer.
10 of its workers every year on its what it calls its frontline workers, the folks who are, washing the chicken.
But again, lower wages, taking American jobs. This was the reason why Democrats were opposed to illegal immigration.
Permits for asylum seekers. A coalition of labor and immigration rights organizations in New York is calling on the Biden administration to expand rights for migrants, allowing them to live and work legally in the U.S. for an extended period. Asylum seekers admitted into the U.S. have to wait a minimum of 180 days before being authorized to work, preventing them from earning to support themselves and their families amid limited access to public services, and in the latest crisis, scenes of migrants forced to sleep on the streets of Midtown Manhattan. The coalition includes organizations such as African Communities Together, Make the Road New York, and Proyecto Faro. The letter to Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas requests that Mayorkas expand temporary protective status for migrants from the 16 countries of origin already eligible, including El Salvador, Honduras, and Venezuela, but who are not eligible for TPS themselves based on when they arrived to the U.S. The letter also requests that the Biden administration designate several countries as eligible for TPS, including Guatemala and Democratic Republic of the Congo, which are experiencing civil unrest. TPS is a DHS program that protects migrants from deportation, grants them work permits, and allows travel. Many asylum seekers the group wants the Biden administration to assist arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border, having fled from South and Central America as well as Haiti. The push for expanded TPS designation comes as cities across the U.S. have struggled to provide basic support for hundreds of thousands of migrants, including food, shelter, and work.
They cannot work to provide themselves. We have to provide food, shelter, clothing, cleaning, education, health care.
Immigration reform. Immigration reform is an issue that the mayor is discussing on a federal level.
There's a crisis. Mayor Eric Adams has criticized the Biden administration. He's asked for more federal help. Is he going to get any?
It's not going to get any better. From this moment on, it's downhill.
Massachusetts and New York have issued emergency declarations and requested federal assistance to house migrants. Thousands of migrants have been bused from Republican-held states to New York and other Democratic-led cities without coordination, further straining local social services. Nearly 100,000 asylum seekers have arrived in New York City alone since last year, and more than 57,200 remain in the city's care. City officials, including Mayor Eric Adams, have announced that resources such as the shelter system are at capacity, as upwards of 500 migrants arrive each day. Many migrants still work even without authorization, but often face dangerous and exploitative conditions. Employers may use a migrant's undocumented work status against them, while TPS gives them peace of mind. Advocates noted labor shortages throughout New York State and beyond. Advocates have said that the Biden administration has previously expanded TPS designation for Ukraine ahead of non-white countries experiencing war and unrest. Diana Konate, a policy director for African Communities Together, said African migrants, in particular, often arrive to the U.S. as asylum seekers or through other humanitarian relief programs, but come from countries that aren't granted TPS designation. The conditions in these countries are not safe for people to return to, Konate said. We want the U.S. government to provide a level of protection here in the U.S. so that people feel comfortable when they're here, knowing that they have lawful status, but also so they can take care of themselves and their families, contribute to their communities, and really be able to live full lives in dignity.
As you know, the city's already been spending millions of dollars to care for the influx of migrants that have entered the city.
The magnitude of this migration crisis, shouldered almost entirely by the New York City taxpayers.
It's an issue dominating the headlines and dividing the nation: immigration.
The national leaders are saying we're not going to stop the flow. That's a failed plan.
Elizabeth Roberts, Director of Administration and Finance at Proyecto Faro, supported TPS expansion but called TPS a Band-Aid. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.